Hello and welcome to Hymns House, episode 2. Again, I'm here with Lewis Stevens and Dr. H. Today we're going to talk about the Hims and Hers business model. Is it Netflix? Is it SaaS? Is it something else?
To answer the question, the question is controversial. I think this is at the heart of the volatility in the stock. People just fundamentally don't understand the business model. And so I guess, Dr. H, could you explain what a patient experiences from start to finish? For instance, I'm coming to you and I'm struggling with hair loss or some sort of dermatology related illness. They come to you with anxiety, with uncertainty, and they're doing this in a digital format. Could you explain that process start to finish? Could you shed light on that for everyone?
Yeah, I think with how HIMSS started, they initially started with treatment options for conditions and things that were classically seen as sensitive subjects that patients and people may not initially be very comfortable talking to someone in person about. So sexual health, erectile dysfunction, mental health, anxiety, depression, hair loss. To take that initial, in the traditional healthcare setting, to take that initial step to put yourself out there, to go to your doctor and try to bring up some of these topics, it's sometimes uncomfortable. So to have these traditional offerings that are now available online through a very patient-friendly, confidential, discreet way to access your healthcare, I think is something that is really appealing to people. So the way this works is, once a person finds out about HIMSS, they'll log on to the website or to the app, and they'll initially just mention what their concerns are, sexual health, erectile dysfunction. They'll enter in some of their basic demographics and profile information, name and stuff like that. They'll go through a very thorough medical intake questionnaire. I've seen these intake questions. They're basically questions, and they're designed to gather all the information that a normal doctor would probably ask you about when you are seeing them for hair loss or for anxiety or for erectile dysfunction. So they're very thorough questions that will drill down what your experience is, what have you tried to help with this condition, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what's your medical information like? Is there any reason why you should take one treatment or the other? Or is there a reason why you should not take any treatment from HIMSS? So after they do this very thorough questionnaire, this information then gets submitted, and there's a whole team of doctors and nurse practitioners and clinicians that will basically go through the list and will basically see you. It's usually a chat-based interaction. So you're texting the doctor, you're texting the nurse practitioner. You let them know if you have any questions. Hey, I'm really concerned about taking this ED medicine. Is this normal for someone who's 35? And you'll get your answers and stuff like that. The doctor will make the recommendation and create the prescription for you. And then from there, the prescription gets processed by HIMSS's partner pharmacies or in-house pharmacies. And these treatments are delivered to your doorstep in a usually discreet packaging. It just takes away kind of all these pain points of seeing your doctor for these sensitive conditions that you might not be comfortable talking about. So that's just a general walkthrough on how one would go about getting into the whole HIMSS medical sphere.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, I think with that context in mind, it's like, what can we compare this to? Is it a direct consumer brand? Are we buying shoes from Nike? Are we buying scrubs from figs.com? Are we buying shoes or shorts from Allbirds? It's clear that Dr. H just described a product that is vastly different in a number of respects relative to just simply buying shoes or shirts. And he didn't get into the weight loss products and the follow-up protocols and the titrating doses, and we didn't discuss the future products on the product roadmap. And so, I have a perspective on the business model relative to other business models, but I just want to elaborate all of these ideas for you, the listener, who may not be familiar with with this landscape or with this business model. And I'd also just like to share considerations before I just drill home my own perspective on the situation. So, there's nuance to the business model. It's not like Netflix, where you're deciding between Hulu or Netflix or Disney Plus, and you're ultimately subscribing to watch a television show. That's a vastly different business model that's going to have different unit economics. It's going to have different churn dynamics. So it's a different business model relative to direct to consumer. It's a different business model relative to these streaming platforms like Netflix, which, by the way, one of HIM's board members is this gentleman named David Wells, and he's the former CFO of Netflix. And so it's not like Netflix one-to-one, though there are some similarities. And it's certainly not like software as a service. And I think for myself personally, when I was first introduced to the business model, my first inclination was, what's its net retention rate? What's its gross retention rate? Net retention rate is basically how much a given cohort spends year over year. So that cohort, they capture 10 customers that spend $10. The next year they spend 12, so your net retention rate is 120%. And that's indicative of the business's ability to upsell customers, grow spend with a given cohort of customers over time. And the gross retention rate is, you capture 10 customers, how many customers are retained year over year. In the case of software as a service, for most of the public companies, they will end up being private if they can't achieve this level of performance, but they'll have between 90% and 100% gross retention. And so when I first was introduced to the business model, I was like, all right, what are they retaining 90% of these customers? And it's just not going to be the case, because Dr. H described, in the case of his example, it was an ED scenario. The ED scenario may be chronic in nature, it may be a lifelong thing, it may be a recreational thing for somebody in their 40s, 50s, or older, and those could be customers of HIM, certainly. Or it could be a near-term issue related to stress or something, And there's all of the products that HIMS offers could be relatively acute in nature. And so this is why in the first episode and just generally my perspective on the business is that this is a competitor to urgent care or primary care, in the sense that right now prospective patients go to an urgent care, go to a primary care with an issue, like we've discussed already. They get it addressed and then they churn. There's no ongoing subscription. And all of those are profitable entities. The urgent care, the primary care, those are profitable businesses that exist all over the country. So, when we think about all of this, we can't use, and this is just really my main point, we can't use Netflix as, I want to touch on Netflix. We can't use Nike, we can't use Allbirds, we can't use these business models to inform what HIMS is. We can use the traditional urgent care and primary care to inform what it is, and it's just doing that digitally and at huge scale.
And so that's roughly to say, Lewis, that while churn is all important or extremely important for, say, Netflix or various SaaS businesses, it might be a little less important for HIMS, depending on how we frame its competition. Is that right?
So, churn is very important. And that's where, I just said there's nuance to the comparisons. In the case of Netflix, HIMS could be seen as something close to a Netflix for products like finasteride and minoxidil. Those are genuinely lifelong products. ED meds, other dermatology meds, weight loss meds, those could be acute. That could last a year, 2 years, 5 years, and then you're done with it. Your psychiatric stuff, especially psychiatric stuff. People go through traumatic events in life, and there's a few different solutions. But somebody a functioning adult may choose not to use drugs and alcohol, and may choose an option that Hims and Hers Health offers, and that could just last for a year as they get through that event. So, but there is the lifelong subscription. Finasteride and minoxidil, those are lifelong subscriptions. Once somebody starts that at 30, 40, 50, or even 60, they're on that for life. And in that sense, it does have a resemblance to the Netflix business model.
Recurring and predictable revenue.
And HIMSS does have books of business within that chunk of $1.4 billion in sales that it will do in 2024, 1.5. It has forever revenue in there. That's just like an annuity that, I can't say forever, there's no guarantees, but there's like real, very durable customers that are spending $200, $400 a year on a finasteride, minoxidil, combination medication that they take every day, and they'll take every day for the next, until they don't care about their hair. And so that's a unique aspect of it. But then like the net retention rate, the software element of it, you could look at it through the lens of the business is adding more products. It is capable of increasing the spend of its long-term customers. While we can't compare it to these other business models, we can look at the other business models and better understand HIMSS and use the insights from those other business models to better understand the nuance of HIMSS.
So it's entirely product dependent then. There are some products where you would care quite a bit about churn, and others where it's just a lot less relevant.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And that's been one of my main points to the bears. They're saying churn's an issue. And my point is, at some point the business gets so diversified and we can't really identify exactly what's at issue. We can say, CAC to a new subscriber, the cost of every new subscriber is increasing to the point where unit economics are impaired. I don't know if we want to get into that bear debate today, though I will gladly get into that.
Oh, we will soon.
Yep. I will gladly get into that. And that, that's a legitimate bear thesis, and it should be respected and considered. But I think, the various books of business is another important aspect of it. Like in the sense that Nike has 80 different shoes. Which shoe is selling well? Which one's not? At any given time, there might be products within the Nike brand that have impaired unit economics, and those products are going to go to the clearance rack, and from there they're discarded from the business. They're just written off as a loss. Over time, it's pretty much inevitable that HIMSS will have some products as it scales to 10, 20, 30 different pharmaceutical options, different weight loss protocols. It's going to have weak products. There's going to be products that don't exist. Granted, the business model is around in 30 years. There's products that won't exist on the platform. Doctors were prescribing all kinds of crazy drugs 50 years ago. And people were buying the products, and there was utility in those products. I don't want to ramble too much, but that's another aspect of the HIMSS business model that I've grappled with. It's the ethics of the prescriptions, and it's like ultimately they're products that people are making risk return bets on, and that's the state of modern medicine. And primary care physicians are part of the industry. Urgent care physicians are, and consumers buy them and make risk return bets on what they want out of their life. Dr. H, do you see that as controversial? I mean, you're in the industry, so this is something you've thought about. Is this controversial, or?
I want to touch upon one thing that you mentioned that resonated with me. Is you mentioned that HIMSS is going to have products that they'll try out that may last a while, and they may find some other things that just don't work out that great. And I remember HIMSS for a short period of time was offering urgent care visits. So not a product, not a hair loss thing or whatever, but patients could create an urgent care style visit on the platform for what you would see in urgent care. And they tested that out for a while, and I think it never really took off. It became a very popular service that was offered on the platform, to the point where I think they may have even stopped providing that service now. But to that point, it's just in such a unique position to try different things out and to see if it can replicate one model or the other. Like they have the ability to go out and try different treatments and products, and if one doesn't work, they just kind of slowly let it go off into the sunset. And that's what we saw with some of their urgent care style offerings is, it wasn't that popular. And then they focused their energy on introducing the whole weight loss management vertical. So that's what's kind of excites me about HIMSS is that they are a company that's willing to look at the challenges of a healthcare system and try to address that in a logical, meaningful, profitable kind of way. And if it's not working out, they can always come back to that challenge in the future, and in the near term, focus on other things that are working well.
Do you think these urgent care offerings they might revisit at some point in the future? I only ask because Lewis has compared HIMSS to primary care physicians and urgent care as sort of competing with those two institutions. Just curious if they may revisit this at any point.
Well, I think, what do people go to urgent care for? I think there's a broad spectrum of what people use urgent care for. Maybe the semantics are an issue here, but I would say that HIMSS sexual health products are certainly in competition with at least some chunk of the urgent care total TAM.
Probably more primary care. Urgent care, for medical sense, we'll see things like you got a cut in your finger, or you think something's infected, you got a boil or something, and you might need an antibiotic or prescription. So that was kind of the stuff that some people were trying to get care for through the HIMSS urgent care model. And it wasn't working out great, I don't think, because a lot of these cases, clinicians were like, well, that boil might need to be popped, get all the gunk out, You might need, that's really badly infected. You actually probably need to get IV antibiotics through the hospital or something like that. So in that sense, that's what we're thinking about for urgent care. So stuff like ED, that's more primary care. Could they revisit this? Yeah.
But I think I still stand. I think people use urgent care for a wide variety. I think in the truest sense, yes, I see what you're saying, but I think people are using it a bit more liberally.
Also, I agree with you. People don't know where to go, actually. Patients will go to urgent care for something that can be handled in a primary care setting. So people have trouble navigating the healthcare system too. And I think maybe in a future podcast episode, I know, Lewis, you're really big into AI and the role in HIMSS. I think, with things like, technology and AI, it can really help HIMSS and in general patients navigating the healthcare system of, hey, where am I supposed to go for this issue? Can I be seen in HIMSS? Should I actually go to the hospital? Should I go to an in-person doctor who may have different things they can offer rather than through the internet? So that may actually be something that vastly gets incorporated into what HIMSS can offer.
And that was the other thing I wanted to highlight is that over time, I personally believe that technology will unlock new offerings for HIMSS. In dermatology, I think just sending images of ailments or afflictions and allowing AI to analyze those images in the same way Google is able to provide search results based on a text description of an image, or these LLMs are able to surface AI generated images based on a text description. I think there's going to be unlocks using technology. And, I think that I don't want us to get in, we'll talk about Teladoc in the future, but a lot of this stuff was a part of the Teladoc thesis. The main issue with Teladoc was just simply that they had horrible unit economics. Their business model was fundamentally broken. It took them 20 years to generate the first inklings of free cash flow. And it was just a pittance of free cash flow. HIMSS is 6.5 years in, and it's generating robust free cash flow at this point relative to its scale. And its margins are scaling linearly. And so I think they're in a great position to use technology to unlock more treatments in the future.
Would you say Hims is not really a healthcare company, but like a technology company?
I think that could be a shift in the way people see it. I think it should be with the vertical integration idea. It's like, and that's another element of Teladoc. It was not a technology company. It was, I mean, it was rough. You can look at the share price; it's been rough, but yeah, Teladoc didn't have nearly the technological acumen that Hims does. Their ability to build their apps, create seamless technology, and to do it profitably with you look at their financials. The big bear thesis is that all of the money is going to sales and marketing, and we'll talk about that in the future. That's one of the big bear theses. But I think it's a bull thesis that they're able to spend that much while creating these wonderful products. They've created the Hers brand over the last couple of years with a relatively small R&D budget and SG&A budget. I don't want to puff it up too much. They still have to deliver, but it's certainly a technology company. In comparison to Teladoc, it might as well be Google. It's not. It's not. I want to be very clear about that. It's certainly not at that scaling level. But I mean, Teladoc was not a technology company.
I want to touch upon technology in a slightly different sense. It kind of blew my mind when Hims came out with their heart health combination medicine. If you're not aware, they, in the past year and a half-ish, they introduced a combination ED medicine with a low-dose statin medicine. A statin is a cholesterol-lowering medicine, also typically used for heart health, lowering your risk of cardiovascular heart disease, heart attacks, stroke, stuff like that. And when we got this notice that Hims is offering this, we're like, my personal reaction was like, whoa, I don't think I would have ever thought to combine an ED medicine with a low-dose statin. Number one. Number two, I wouldn't have even known that this was possible to combine them, using their compounding pharmacies. And then the more I thought of it, it was like, this actually makes sense. There's new studies coming out that a low-dose occasional usage of the statin medicine can lower your risk of heart disease and heart attack by a clinically significant amount. And then I was thinking, well, who uses ED medicines? A big part of it could be people who are in a certain age range who have high blood pressure, who have diabetes, and those conditions cause your ED. It damages your blood vessels, damages your nerves, but what else does it do? It causes heart attacks. So the innovation for them to even think of combining these medicines into one treatment where it helps your ED, but also lowers your risk of heart disease, heart attack. To me, at that point, I was like, wow, this is crazy. Can you do this? Hims, can you do this? And it's like this whole brand new, it's not really a class of medicine, but just a whole new area where you're addressing multiple issues at once, where I never really would have thought of doing those two in one. So to me, that's like a medical technology and medical innovation.
I love that perspective because I was recently introduced to that idea of pharmaceuticals as a technology. Maybe I'm late to understanding it in that regard, but that sequence of words, this pharmaceutical, this drug, this pill, this injection is a technology. And I think with AI, there's going to be more products on the Hims, and we've been talking about it today. There's going to be more products on the Hims platform. With new technology, we're going to be able to build new products. Like, finasteride still isn't popular. Tom Brady, Chris Bumstead, Elon Musk, they're all on finasteride. But a lot of average men don't know that they can have hair for basically nothing, like in terms of the cost relative to the benefit. And that, that's a technology. And so what new technologies are on the horizon, especially with the advent of AI? And people, some people who are pharmaceutical experts will roll their eyes and say, there hasn't been, a great acceleration of drug discovery. There's supposed to have been by now with all the AI. At least I think I've seen that, those ideas posited out there.
Are people really saying that? Jeez, we're still so early in AI. I'm sorry they're saying that.
I think the technology aspect is really interesting. Him does it. Yes.
Yeah.
To answer your question, Dr. H, it is a technology company. I think it could more mature into that and be seen more as that over time. You know, it's had a rough reputation thus far. You know, the way people characterize it.
Yeah, Jonathan, in episode 1, I think you asked, can't anyone just offer these generics for a cheap price? And that, to me, when I think of it that way, I'm thinking, okay, that's kind of like a direct to consumer. You're getting direct generic medicines. And I was thinking, yes, I mean, someone could set up a company and a clinic and sell you finasteride for, 50 cents rather than $3. But I really feel like just with these recent developments of these combination treatments that HIMSS is offering, I think that's kind of where I'm getting the sense that, they're not really direct to consumer for these traditional medicines. They're really innovating into this whole new world of healthcare technology that offers these new novel treatments to tackle multiple problems at once.
Well, this has been another outstanding episode of HIMSS House. In future weeks, we may talk about the regulatory landscape, GLP-1s, HIMSS expansion into women's health. Why is the stock so volatile? We can't wait to see you soon. Thank you.